debating, interviewing. You know, that's what they doing. Stick around. It's about to get all Ruby up in here. Remote Ruby starts now.
Hello.
Yeah.
We got a full house today.
Full house. I gonna have to go full screen just to see everyone on Zoom. Let's go. Dig in.
Yeah. We've got the Rocky Mountain Ruby team here with us. I'm just going to let you guys jump in and give introductions. So, Bekki, you want to start?
I'm Bekki Freeman. I live here in Longmont, Colorado, and senior software developer. Been doing Ruby on Rails since about 2015, mostly in leadership these days, but I still enjoy writing a lot of code. So I'll pass it over to Spike.
Hey, I'm Spike Ilacqua. I'm in Boulder, Colorado. I am also a senior software developer. I picked up Rails around the 1.2.3 release and never looked back. And Marty.
Hello, Marty Haught here in Longmont, Colorado. We're all very close to each other. Been in the Ruby community quite a time. I got started in 2005 with things and started Boulder Ruby in 2006. And then, of course, Rocky Mountain Ruby, which we're going to talk about. We'll get to the specifics. I'm currently an engineering leader. I actually am the interim open source lead for Ruby Central, which by the time this goes live, it'll be announced, but organizing our efforts around Ruby gems and bundler and general OSS support for Ruby.
Congratulations. And thank you for what you're about to do and all you have done.
There's a lot to do.
Yeah. It's not the most thanked job in the world either. I'm curious how you all met. I'm assuming maybe since you're all in the similar area, or was it through conferences or work or what?
Marty and I go way back.
Yeah.
I used to work for Marty on a project. And I think that was the first time we met, right? With that Ruby Boulder.
Yeah, I think Spike came to Boulder Ruby. I mean, Boulder Ruby was really kind of the place. Like it was the hub for Rubyists in the area. So I've been doing it since 2006. I have co-organizers now, so I don't do all of the work, but I don't do that much work anymore. The others do. It's great. But it really is a hub. And so many people have connected through that group over the years.
Has it run nonstop since 2006?
It has gone nonstop since 2006, including during COVID, which we went remote. And it was definitely a letdown for many of us because we really loved getting together in person, but we kept it going. And I mean, maybe there's a month or two that we missed. We certainly have months where we take off. But yeah, since 2006, steady.
That's amazing. We could barely keep one going for 3 years in my city. I can't imagine going almost 20 years in. That's phenomenal.
Yeah, there's a really strong community here. Marty also helped launch something years ago called Code and Coffee, which is just a meetup we do every Wednesday. Just go to a coffee shop, hang out. And it's not Ruby only, but it's mostly Ruby people. So we get to see each other most weeks. And there's also a Slack that's been going for a very long time. That's sort of just the local development community, Boulder, but also all the way down to, say, Denver. So actually a pretty well connected, friendly community here.
I'm jealous. Marty, how did the conference get started? So I assume you maybe got bigger aspirations after the meetup was doing well.
Yeah, there's a lot to tell with that. And I think it's also maybe worth exploring what it was like back in 2005, 2006, because Ruby had just come on the scene. So many developers had no idea about it. Many of us were writing Java. I was writing Java at the time, or PHP. It was really pretty bad. And all of a sudden you encounter Ruby and Rails and you're like, what is this? And there was just an immense amount of excitement about it. And so I wanted to talk about it and learn more and get better at it. And so that's what started Boulder Ruby. And there was just a huge amount of energy. Groups are starting all over the place for this. And at RubyConf in 2006, that was in Denver, I had already kind of plugged into the community. Chad Fowler lived actually in Longmont at the time. And so I met Chad and talked to Chad. And of course, he was sort of like the unofficial leader of the Ruby community and conferences at that point in time. So I got connected to that crowd. Important note, RubyConf 2006 sold out in 30 minutes. They had maybe 300 tickets for sale. So when it went on sale, they didn't announce it either. They're just like, okay, tickets are on sale. Here you go. And so people in Europe were sleeping when they went on sale. They woke up the next morning and this had never happened before. It sold out. And like, I always go to RubyConf. What do you mean I can't go to RubyConf? There was a smaller community that went to the conferences. It wasn't like it is now or would become. And so at the conference, many of us talked about like, we need to start maybe a smaller regional conference. And there were no regionals at that point. And I had a conversation with Mike Moore and Pat Eiler in Denver about, hey, we should start a regional conference in the mountain area. It would be called Mountain West. And so I joined them and helped organize Mountain West in 2007, 2008, and 2009. And also many other regionals started happening around that time, just started popping up. But we were originally going to have Mountain West rotate into region. So it would come to Boulder or Denver. And Mike was like, this is a lot of work. I don't really want to rotate it. I just want to run it in Salt Lake. And it was great. Mountain West was a phenomenal conference. So at that point, I'm like, okay, we should have something here in Colorado. So in 2010, I said, I'm going to do it. I know enough. I thought I knew enough. So I launched the conference in 2010.
And Spike, I'm going to ask you this. What was the decision like to bring it back last year?
Sure. So I hadn't been to a Ruby conference or really any conference for many years. I went to Rocky Mountain Ruby, but it eventually moved to Denver and then pivoted into something else and kind of faded away. So I had probably not been to a conference since maybe 2015. And then, of course, COVID put a damper on that sort of thing. But then in 2022, RubyConf was scheduled to be in Texas, and it had been scheduled far ahead of the date. And there was a lot of political things going on in Texas, and there were a lot of people in the community who were uncomfortable going to Texas. So Gemma Iseroff and Emily Sam decided to have a second mini version of RubyConf somewhere else that people who didn't feel comfortable going to Texas could go to. And they happened to choose Providence, Rhode Island, where I'm from. And so I'm like, hey, I can go to conference and go visit my family and get the time off from work and all that. So I was like, oh, great, I'll enjoy the conference, but I'll also get a little free PTO out of this. So I went and I just had an amazing time and caught up with people I hadn't seen in years, met some new friends, and did all that stuff we love about conferences. Oh, right. I like conferences. And then they talked a fair amount. They had recruited Andy Kroll to help them. They talked a fair amount of what it is to like put on a conference for the first time without knowing what you're doing. And they were also then on a couple of podcasts talking about it. I'm like, I could probably do this too. So in early 2023, I'm like, yeah, I'm going to try this. So I went and found Marty and some of the people who ran a Rocky Mountain Ruby after and said, hey, do you mind if I try to reboot this? And Marty was like, great, nope. And he was also very happy to help. So I was like, all right, I'm going to give this a try. And I have no idea what I'm doing, but there are people around who do, and I will just give it a shot.
And Bekki, you got involved last year as well?
Yeah, I kind of just showed up and said, hey, Spike, I'm going to help you. I'm going to be your volunteer. And that's how it started. I just asserted myself. And then this year I got promoted to co-organizer, which was exciting. So similar to what Spike said. I just was so excited to have a community local. Now that everyone's remote, my entire team is outside Colorado. It just started getting so lonely. And so having this really vibrant Ruby community nearby has been a lifeline for me. I go to Code and Coffee every Wednesday and pretend I have coworkers. And we have a lovely time and we talk about tech. And so I wanted more of that.
Yeah, and I had just thrown out, I mentioned we have that Slack channel. So I just threw out the Ruby channel, hey, anyone want to help me with this? And also announced it at the Boulder Ruby meetup. And Bekki was one of the volunteers, and she volunteered to get pricing on t-shirts and badges. And then she designed the t-shirts and the badges and ordered the t-shirts and the badges.
Don't tell anyone I designed the t-shirts last year. It's a very
on a
simple
Zoom call
design.
in 15 minutes.
That's
that was my
impressive.
favorite. I went to the t-shirt shop and they're like, if you get me the order by 3 p.m. today, and this is 1 p.m., we can get your t-shirts. Otherwise, no. And so I panicked. I called Spike. I was like, we don't have a design and I'm mediocre with Adobe Illustrator. So we sat on a Zoom and just moved stuff around and chose the nerdiest font we could find. And off we went. And we made our deadline everyone got t-shirts.
Yes.
Nice. As a former designer, well versed with Illustrator, I am impressed. I know that's not easy. So shout out to you.
Woo!
But then after she'd
And
done
I
all
lo-
that, she kept doing things. So
He couldn't get rid
I
of me. It was
couldn't
great.
get rid of her. Had to bring her on as a co-organizer.
Spike, what do you think was the biggest challenge about that?
Well, it's definitely just not knowing what I was doing. It's a little scary because the first thing you have to do is find a venue and give them money and hope that you're going to get it back. And then it's like, well, there's insurance and there's catering and there's t-shirts and badges and selling tickets and just a lot that I had no idea of how to do. But I had 3 really good mentors. So first, Andy Kroll was really happy to talk to me. He's a great guy. I don't know when he sleeps, but he was happy to hop on a Zoom and tell me all about Brighton Ruby. And then coincidentally, Jeremy Smith had started up Blue Ridge Ruby, and he was about 6 weeks ahead of me. So I could talk to him, and I did on numerous occasions to say, you've gone past this point. What did you do here? And he was just super helpful. And then Marty was, he's done this, and he just has a great sense of who's a good speaker and how to make the conference flow. So he was super helpful in going through the submissions and helping pick the talks and helping set the program and all that. So I had a lot of really good help that made
It's
it less
such
scary.
a testament to how nice our community is and how
Yes.
giving and caring it is. It's really been amazing how much time people are willing to put into helping another group be successful.
What's funny about that is back in the day when the regionals started popping up, we formed a group, a mailing list. And this mailing list was heavily trafficked. It was used a lot. And one of the things I did at some point, I'm like, I'm going to make an organizer's checklist. I put on my blog and I shared it. And so many people use that because conferences are just like a massive amount of logistics that you have to do in a certain sequence. And if you don't, or if you forget something and you scramble at the end, it's really painful and you might miss something or it might deteriorate the experience. And so there's a lot of, okay, you need to do this bare minimum thing, but you might also want to put some more intention and thought into this one aspect because how people flow through a space matters. How you cater food matters. And you can punt on some of that and some things you can't punt on. And so it's sort of looking at your risk and what do you really need, what's really crucial. And of course, what are you willing to put in? Because for almost all of us, this is a huge financial risk.
Yeah.
People might not buy tickets. People might sponsor. And that's scary. So you want to have a little more sense of what you're getting into and how to navigate that. So yeah.
Marty, you've been doing this a long time. I'm curious, some of your famous guests over the year, anything really important that you learned in those first few years of doing this?
So the years that I ran it was 2010 through 2012. After 2012, I joined Ruby Central. I mean, I think many people know this, but just in case people don't know, I joined Ruby Central at that point and stopped running Rocky Mountain Ruby because I was running RailsConf and RubyConf. So I took things to the next level. But yeah, it was a wild time. So 2010. So here we had Jim Wyrick opening. And for those that don't know, Jim unfortunately passed away in 2014. An amazing person, gentle soul, brilliant man, so generous. If you don't know Jim Wyrick, you should just Google that. And there's videos on him and he's given lots of talks. Definitely worth checking out. Amazing person. Wayne Seguin. By the way, many of these people, when they were talking, were not a big deal yet. So there's kind of this Ruby famous thing that happens. A lot of these people were not a big deal when they were speaking. Aaron Patterson, I think this is the first time he keynoted in 2010. I approached him and said, "Hey, Aaron, you're amazing." I had met him years earlier and I'm like, "Come to Rocky Mountain Ruby and speak." By the way, it's called Mountain RB the first year. I got a lot of flack because people thought it was too similar to Mountain West. So apparently putting Rocky in front of the name made it all better. Just kind of funny. Evan Phoenix came out for that. QB McMahon spoke. Chad Fowler came. He did not speak or organize. I wanted that to be a gift. Chad, just hang out with everyone and not have to do any work. Jim Brimzik was there. He spoke. And John Dahl, you may not know John, but John founded Zencoder and Mux. And he did a great talk back. That was 2010. This is a 2-day conference, by the way. So I think we had maybe 12 speakers. 2011, Michael Feathers opened that one. Justin Searles gave his first talk. he would create test double and become quite the speaker that everyone knows now. But this is like his first time. He was super nervous on stage. It is really amazing. Anthony Eden, the D and Simple founder. This is before D and Simple. He spoke. I knew Anthony back then too. Abdi Grimm, Susan Bond, Jeff Casimir before he started touring spoke. Zach Coleman, if you remember Zach as a very prominent, very vocal GitHubber in the early days of GitHub. Jim Wyrick's actually performed a song called Ruby Coding High in the second year.
Please tell me we have a recording of that somewhere.
We have a recording. You can look it up. By the way, many of these talks are online with Confreaks. 2010 was not recorded, unfortunately, but you can find in 2011. And then Charles Max Wood also spoke in 2011. 2012, Sandy Metz keynoted. She opened. That was before she started keynoting all the conferences. She's amazing. Russ Olson closed as the closing keynote. He was the eloquent Ruby author. Ben Orenstein also, Thoughtbotter, big into apprenticeship at MicroConf kind of guy. Roy Tomei, who's the founder of AppSignal, which, AppSignal is a big deal now, but he hadn't started AppSignal back then. I remember talking to Roy, and Jose Valim, who would go on to create Elixir, spoke in 2012. So yeah, we've had a few.
You're like people like find talent. Like they found Justin Bieber on YouTube. That's what you do for Ruby speakers.
There you go.
You've started so many
He's
wonderful
Usher.
speaking careers.
He's the Usher of the Ruby community.
Exactly. You should be getting finder's fees.
Oh, that's amazing. I think for me, one of the things that I loved about this was some people back in the day really wanted to go with known folks and known speakers. But I was like, I wanted to give people a chance. I'm like, I want to give you the opportunity to get up on stage and share what you're passionate about. And I hope it works out. And yeah, I changed that RailsConf and RubyConf were a lot more first-time speakers. We're starting to get into both of those conferences and wanted to really change the diversity also of the speaker lineup back then.
Before we kind of get into this year, I'm curious, what was the reason for putting it on pause?
So I handed it off after 2012. There was no way I could do a solo conference as well as RailsConf and RubyConf. I was pretty clear about that. My wife would have probably divorced me and it would have sucked. So I knew my limit and I handed off to Stefan Hagman and Sarah Tipton. And they ran it for, I think, 2 years. Then it got handed off eventually, as sort of Spike mentioned, it actually got handed off to Turing. And Turing moved it to Denver and then rebranded it to Traversal, which wasn't Ruby at all. And then COVID happened and it just stopped. So that was the arc of that.
Bekki, let's talk this year. What are you looking forward to? What can the attendees look forward to?
This year, we had the hardest time choosing sessions. We had so many good submissions. It blew us away. We announced the call for proposals were open. And like that night, we had 7 already. And then the numbers just kept going up from there. And so I am most excited about the dynamic speakers and the topics that we have. We have a topic on Bridgetown, which I'm super excited about because I don't want to write other languages. I just want to write Ruby, even if it's for a landing page. We have Irina from Evil Martians. And that to me is the most exciting part. My biggest hope is that we have good weather. October in Colorado is gorgeous and our layout is really conducive to going outside and chatting with people. And that's been, to me, the biggest success of these small conferences is you can go outside and you can talk to every single person at the conference and, leave having met 50 new people, 100 new people. So cross your fingers, toes, everything for good weather so we can hang out outside and go walk to all the lunch venues around Boulder. Boulder is a super walkable city. We don't serve lunch and it's actually worked out really great in that way because people group up and walk to the food halls that are, 5-10 minute walk away. So they get that really nice extra connection time together.
I was going to say, it sounds like an Andy Kroll thing.
Yeah, I stole that from Andy and from Jeremy Smith. And
Borrowed with love.
Borrowed with love. Yes, they're well aware of it. And yeah, we also do long breaks between the talks. We all love the hallway track.
Yeah, it sounds like you're deliberate about that, where it's like, we know we want to have content and speakers, but the whole point is we're not sitting in a room together silent, listening to one person talk. It's like, we're here because we want to experience it together. It sounds like you're pretty deliberate about that.
Yeah, back when we started, that wasn't the norm for conferences. There was very much the expectation that you packed in as many talks as you could, you minimize breaks. And when I started Rocky Mountain Ruby, I wanted that different experience. I mean, we would do outdoor activities. That was a thing that I think was fairly unusual about our conference. I mean, others do it as well, but like we had a trail run one year, we did hiking other years, we did yoga. So like we got people outside and we made it part of the program. And I think it's great that Spike and Bekki agree and are carrying that on and sort of a tradition that was started long ago.
Yo, quick question for you. Do you want higher clarity into production but don't have the time to become a wizard in observability? Honey Badger Insights is exactly what you need. Forget the old school trio of logs, metrics, and traces. We're talking structured events that don't just sit there. They're your treasure map to solving mysteries in your app. With Honey Badger, sling your logs and events into the mix and voila, you just unlock the power of Honey Badger's new query language, BadgerQL. It's like having a conversation with your data. Ask it anything. Turn mishaps into metrics and showcase your wins on dashboards that even the marketing team will drool over. And guess what? This isn't just for big spenders. Honey Badger's got you covered with a free plan that packs a punch, including error tracking, uptime monitoring, sleek status pages, and more. Oh, and speaking of errors, Honey Badger treats them like VIPs at the club. With Insights and BadgerQL, your errors aren't just problems, they're opportunities. Explore your data in ways you didn't think were possible and get the insights that you deserve. Check out honeybadger.io. That's right, honeybadger.io.
What about support from the community, including other conferences? Y'all have talked about Andy Kroll and Jeremy Smith, both friends of the show and friends of ours. So there's mention of guidance from Ruby Central. What's all that like?
What's been really exciting the last couple of years, Ruby Central they know everything about running a conference, as Marty alluded to, and they have the playbook and they have the suggestions and the pitfalls, the things to look out for. And so Ruby Central has started doing a lot more community Zooms and things like that where we can all share tips. So I've been on a call with Jim from Madison Ruby and said, hey, I don't know how to handle this situation. What should I do? And he just raises his hand. And he says, okay, here's what I did. Here's what worked. Here's what didn't. And so I'm really grateful that Ruby Central is trying to support all of these regional conferences and really just helping us to punch above our weight class in terms of just telling us what we should be doing, what we shouldn't do, and then connecting us with other resources that we wouldn't necessarily have access to as a small regional conference.
And they've also been helping to get the word out to potential sponsors, which is nice.
That's what I was going to ask about next, Spike, is the financial aspect, because one of my friends chose to put on a conference, and it's dangerous, I guess, to put it frankly, to the organizers. If you don't fill up enough seats, or if we're talking hotels and you've got deals with the hotels, you have to pay for the unused rooms and all this other stuff. And I know that it seems the last few years, the finances have not been pouring in for conferences. So what's that been like this year?
It's going all right this year. I mean, it's a nail biter. I have a spreadsheet of like tickets sold versus money spent. And you watch it and hope those two lines converge. Ticket sales are a little faster than last year. I think more people are aware of it. We've done a better job, and with help from Ruby Central, kind of getting the word out. So fingers crossed, I think we're doing well. But it is, you find the venue. We're going to record the videos. I think that's important for the speakers, that we record the talks and get them out there so they're getting that out of this. So you have to, pay the deposit to Confreaks. There's the caterers. And so it can be a little nerve-wracking, but we have two good sponsors this year, DN Simple and App Signal. Both, as Marty mentioned, the founders were early speakers, so they're fond of us. And I think we're doing well. And we've also done some things based on advice from Andy and Marty and Jeremy and a little bit from Emily at RubyConf Mini. We've not done things. So we did not get a hotel. We're not doing this in a hotel because then you're on the hook for rooms. We're actually using a music venue called E-Town, which is just down the street from here. Nice little concert venue. They have excellent sound. They have great sound engineers. So that really helps with recording the conferences. And it's just a nice venue because there's a theater, obviously, but then there's a bar area downstairs. So if people need to take a call or go work on their laptop, they can go down there and actually watch the conference on the TV. And it's just a good place to hang out for people who don't take a walk. We're doing the open lunch, which really cuts down the risk. Catering is probably the most expensive thing at any conference. We do cater breakfast because people need coffee and a little something to get going. Based on the lessons from other organizers, just reduce our risks and streamline everything so that we get to the end not broke. And we managed that last year, just kind of squeaked over the line. So as long as we do that again this year, I'm happy.
And what would you define as your goal, like the takeaway that people take away from this? What kind of experience do you want to give to the attendees?
It's the hallway track, ultimately. I mean, I want people to learn things. I want people to enjoy the conference, but I want them to leave reconnected with their friends, having made new friends, having things they want to take back and check out, and just having had fun. Last year, we had Drew Bragg's game show at the end of the first day, and everyone was just so super energized coming out of that first day and just had a good time. We're trying to organize some after hours stuff this year, but last year we just let it happen organically. And there were just large groups of people who went out to various bars and restaurants and had a good time. People they had just met. Ultimately, that makes me happy. That's what I want to see happen here. People get connected and stay connected.
That's the most beautiful thing about the regional conferences and even the larger conferences. Like Ruby Central did such a good job fostering that type of environment, even at a large scale. That's the whole reason I wanted to do Southeast Ruby in 2017 was like, I had been to RailsConf and RubyConf and we didn't have anything near me. And I was like, if I could bring that kind of like vibe, like you said, the hallway track, I never even thought about, even to this day, that's really all I cared about was just the people meeting and hanging out. It's been so invaluable to me personally. And I think it's cool. That's such a focus for y'all too.
There's an interesting thing that happened when I went to Ruby Central in 2012 is I brought a bunch of aspects of regionals to RubyConf and RailsConf. You can't do everything. I mean, there's something magical about the size and the space that a regional offers as a single track that you can't do. And you really shouldn't try to do some of those things when you've got the large, everyone's coming together across the world to this one time in November or whatever. But there are some things you can do. And so I brought a lot of that with me when I joined. I think probably the thing I'm most proud of that we haven't touched on yet is the Guides and Scholars program at Ruby Central started at Rocky Mountain Ruby. It was called the Opportunity Scholars. And I wanted to give this early, easy entry into conferences that was supported. You had a guide, you had this nice community, very small community, and made it less scary. And so it worked so well. I had to bring it to Ruby Central. And then, of course, I took off. But I think that's the great thing is there are things that the larger conferences can learn from the regionals. And it's great when you can incorporate those things.
I've had a lot of friends benefit from that program. So thank you for that. A lot of people who wouldn't have been able to go otherwise and have since become friends and collaborators and more. So it's very cool.
Yeah, Chris, I think your recent scholar is part of our local Boulder community.
Yeah, she should be there. I think she was saying she was practicing giving her talk or whatever at Boulder and then hoping to speak at Rocky Mountain and stuff. And yeah, the Scholars and Guides thing is just, I mean, I've been to conferences and you show up and it's like your first Ruby conference. Like I went to Ruby Midwest. I was like a college student, knew nobody there. But then later on, I found that I had gotten a Honey Badger t-shirt at that conference. And it was like, I'm friends with them now, but I was like too nervous to like really get to know them and whatever. I was just like the awkward kid that was there at the conference. But the stuff like the Scholars and Guides being paired up with somebody that is sort of your liaison to everybody else. They're not all scary. They're all super friendly. We're all here because we love the same stuff. Makes, even at a big conference like RailsConf or RubyConf or whatever, you can still have that same more tight-knit regional conference feel by doing stuff like that, which is awesome. Because that was how a couple people took me under their wing at Ruby Midwest, and I became like really good friends with them for a long time. And it was just because they took the time to go be the unofficial guide for me at that conference. And I look back on that so fondly. So that's been one of the highlights, I think, is the Scholars and Guides for sure. And it's such an easy thing to offer. you don't have to do much work. It doesn't seem like, but correct me if I'm wrong.
I mean, no, you're right. What's funny about it is it does take some work to organize it, but it's just like you get them together and then go forth, give them a little bit of structure. And it's amazing the dividends it pays out. I think the essence of it is basically to pay it forward, right? That's what actually happens is the scholars are now like, this was an amazing experience for me. I want to do that for others. And so they do that going forward. And you're like, this is amazing. Yes, go forth and share the love.
Yeah, we know that firsthand. Colin, who works with Chris, was a scholar at one point, and he's been a guide for the past 2 years. I met my co-host of Ruby for All. She was a scholar, and her guide introduced her to me. And now she's a dear friend, and we've been running a podcast for 3 years. So
that's amazing. We call that networking, and networking is a dirty word sometimes, but really it's like all that conference anxiety goes away the second you've made your first friend. And now the rest of the conference is easy after that.
Yeah.
Here's a fun fact from back in 2013, Miami, RubyConf Miami, when that was the first time we did Guides and Scholars at RubyConf. Two of the scholars, Allison McMillan and Kinsey Durham, they became board members of Ruby Central. They're now board members in the Ruby Central. So like back in 2013, 11 years ago.
yeah, investing in the future generation. I'm curious what sort of challenges y'all have had this year for putting it on, because I know it's a challenging process. I'm curious if there's any specific stories that are sticking out already, or if the worst is yet to come.
As Bekki mentioned earlier, it was really a challenge to go through the talks. Last year, we got, I don't know, maybe 30 talks, and it was really easy to pick good ones. And this year, we had over 70, and I'd say 2/3 of them were excellent. And it's so hard to say no to a good talk. Should we do 3 days? No, we shouldn't do 3 days, but we had enough good talks to do 3 days. That's really hard. I mean, it's definitely easier this year because we have a better sense of what we're doing, but the grind is still ahead of us. You know, if anybody wants to start a conference, I'm going to say that it's hard. There's a lot of work. There's a lot of long hours, but it's not difficult. Once you have a good checklist, know the things you need to do, you just got to grind through it.
So far, the hardest thing was Spike and I had 2 weeks where both of us were so swamped at work. We didn't have the mental energy to put into the conference, and we were bumping up against some deadlines. And so anyone who was refreshing our website daily, which hopefully you're not, but if you were, you might have seen some promise dates like slowly shift backwards. But finally, you know, my work slowed down enough that I was able to get my head out of the water and get some stuff done. It's just little things like that because we're all volunteers. And so this is happening in between our work and our family, but we love it and we love this community. And I'm really excited to see everybody in person.
I was just about to ask each of you what your personal reason was for committing all of this time and money and energy and focus, like what each of you takes out of this. I'm going to start, Bekki.
It's going to be broken record, community for sure. The thing I didn't realize, I'm an introvert. I love working from home. I hate commuting. But the thing I didn't realize is how much that connection to other people around us really does impact me. So the last couple of years, I've put on my vision board to be more active in the community and meet more people in Ruby on Rails. And there's always different technologies that come out. And I made a decision that I'm going to commit the rest of my career to Ruby on Rails. And so in order to do that, I need to make sure that Ruby on Rails continues to create opportunities for new developers to come in, and that you really only get jobs these days from who you know. And so just making sure I know people and that I meet new people that I can connect opportunities with. So that's been really top of mind on my goals list for the last couple of years. And that's why I really wanted to get involved with Rocky Mountain Ruby. It was, what better way to meet people than to be a conference organizer? And if you are an introvert like me, there's power in that volunteer t-shirt because you have a reason to go up and talk to someone without that awkward, hey, I'm here. I can actually say, hey, I'm a volunteer. What are you thinking so far? Any feedback? And suddenly I have a new friend. It's amazing.
What about you, Spike?
Well, weirdly enough, I'm an introvert too. So I definitely get that. I like that, well, now I have to talk to people, right? I have to get out of my shell and be involved. And I think it was Andy Crowell told me, and I'm the same way. It's like, he does not go to lunch at his event because he needs to decompress. And I just take a walk, take a bike ride. I've just socialed out at that point. I go out to the evening things, but at lunchtime, I'm just like, all right, I need an hour. It's very much to be also a broken record about building community and wanting to bring people together. You know, I benefit from that, from getting to meet people, make new friends. I got to know Drew Bragg, and we're very friendly now, and just other people from this. And I did it because of that. And I also did it because I could. I'm older. I could take the financial risk. I mean, I don't want to lose money, but obviously somebody early in their career would have a lot harder time saying, all right, I'm going to plunk down $3,000 on this venue, not knowing that I'm ever going to see it again. And also, I think also from just having been around a long time, I was get nervous leading up to the first one. But at some point, I've just said to myself, at the end of 2 days, either 150 people are going to think I did a pretty good job, or 150 people are going to think I'm an idiot for even trying. It's like, well, I can live with that.
It's a small blast radius.
Exactly. Worst case, I totally flop and they're never gonna anything I do again. And that's okay. I could live with that. Fortunately, it turned out well.
And Marty, you've been doing this for a long time.
Yeah. I love giving back. And I recall the early years of my career where I didn't network. I didn't really know to. It was different. It was the late 90s. And it was kind of sad. And then when I discovered like going to community events where people actually connected and cared and not just, I'm just here for the pizza and whatever, that it was very energizing. And I saw the impact it had on others. And I started like, in many ways, I would help people in any way I could. I'd give them advice about how to proceed with their career and such. And I found that both Boulder Ruby and Rocky Mountain Ruby were vehicles that did that at the next level. I could then have larger impact than just what Marty could do, because now there was a group of people that were aligned and wanted the same thing. And it takes on an energy of its own. And so I have to, and I've gotten pretty good at this. It now has been 18 years or so of this constantly, is that I found a way to maintain balance to where like I don't burn myself out. I do take breaks. But it is very energizing, and I just love seeing how it touches people's lives.
It's a very envious of that skill.
Right.
Just takes practice. When I first started going to conferences, I was that person who just sat in the corner and I would talk to people who talked to me, but I didn't engage. And it took a long time to get comfortable doing that. And I'm still like, I'm going to say something stupid, nervous, but I've also reached a point in my life where I don't care. Again, if this person thinks I'm an idiot, it'll be over and I'll move on.
Fair. I mean, I was sitting here thinking, I've seen Marty at so many conferences, and there's been so many times where like, I should walk up and introduce myself. And I'm like, I'm just going to stay in this corner.
Yep. I've been there for sure.
Bekki, you were going to say something?
Yeah, the intersection of all of our communities has been so fun. So I'm also a member of the MicroConf community. And I think I got connected with that community because of Ruby on Rails way back in 2015. Because people who want to start a SaaS business and be bootstrapped, that's the MicroConf community. They're really focused on that. Almost all of them are developers who wanted to start a business. And Ruby on Rails being the one-person framework is such a natural fit for people who want to keep a small, lean business. So I've been going to these MicroConf events and just asking, hey, are any of you Ruby on Rails developers? And 90% of them are. And they're also passionate about business. So it's really fun seeing these two topics intersect. And actually, that's where I got reconnected with Anthony from DN Simple, is he's active in the MicroConf community. So going to that community, I was able to bring more people toward our developer communities here in Boulder because we were talking about business. And then from there, I'm also involved in ELC, which is the engineering leadership community. Go figure, a lot of leaders who care about leadership are also Ruby on Rails developers. So this has been very fun for me, taking the things I'm excited about, which is business, leadership, and development, and being able to put them all together. And so that excites me that I'm able to cross-pollinate between all of these communities and see the same people at multiple conferences with different topics.
Well, I think we're about at the home stretch here. Jason, Chris, y'all have anything else you want to cover?
Where can we buy tickets?
Yeah.
Just throw that one out there.
Give us the plugs, all the plugs.
Sure thing. It's rockymtnruby.dev. I'm sure it'll be in the show notes. Tickets are on sale right up to the date of the conference, but after a certain point, you won't get a t-shirt. So get your ticket soon. We're also still looking for sponsors. If you go to the Rocky Mount Ruby site, there's a sponsorship page. Sponsors definitely help us. Our goal is to reach a certain number of tickets sold and then give the rest of them away to juniors and code school people and things like that. We don't have a formal guide and scholarship program yet, but last year we were able to give away about 20 tickets to people early in their career, and we're hoping to increase that number this year.
And my final question is, what do we have to do to convince you three hosts to come out to our conference?
I'm pretty easy to convince.
I will say you just need to tell Andrew that he won't do it. Just say, Andrew, come to the conference. You won't, and then he will.
Yeah, that's how I've ended up in St. Louis before.
Mine always involves convincing my higher power, which is my wife. So that's my hard sell.
Mine's usually if an opportunity is offered for us to not have to pay for the ticket and do something for the conference, like I'm happy to barter services. That's how I feel about it.
Andrew's getting honest.
Yeah, I'm totally willing to barter services. That's the fact.
Fair. See what we can
That
do.
sounds just like you.
I love going to the conferences. I just can't pay to go to every single conference every year.
Oh, yeah.
There's a lot.
Yeah,
there's a lot of conferences now, which is great.
I remember last year, Rocky Mountain, I remember showing up and thinking, damn, I really want to go. I think it was the same dates as Rails World last year.
Talk about challenges. So last year we accidentally scheduled on the same, it was really when I could get the venue, but it turned out to be overlapping with both Rails World and RubyConf Thailand. RubyConf Thailand is this very funny website where you could pick your October conference, and if you moused over it, it always ended up on RubyConf Thailand.
Whoever runs RubyConf Thailand's social media,
GOAT.
Amazing.
Yes. Our primary issue here is finding a weekend when there isn't a football game, because we have this coach that people are kind of fond of. Coach Prime.
Maybe you've heard of him?
Yeah,
I
Deion
have.
Sanders. Yes.
I've seen the controversy. I've seen it.
Yes. So last year, when they were playing home games, like Beyonce showed up one weekend and The Rock showed up one weekend. And you can imagine what that does to hotel prices. So we had to be very careful to pick a weekend that wasn't happening. And of course, we don't want to overlap with Rails World. Thai Ruby moved to the winter, so we weren't overlapping with them. But it was a very narrow window of weekends that would actually work.
Back in the day when CU didn't have a polarizing popular coach, perhaps, it still was like, you don't pick a weekend with a home football game, because some people will be able to get hotels, but a lot of people won't. And then you're just screwed. And yeah, prices skyrocket. Fun fact also, back in the day, we had a calendar, and that we all tried to coordinate dates when all those regionals were around. Also, it is very important to the regionals to not get too close to RailsConf or RubyConf, because that would just kill your ticket sales, because people would go to your conference and go to those. So yeah, this is an age-old problem for sure.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's what makes it hard for me, is just when they're all like kind of bunched up together, it's hard to travel, and I still got a job to do. And
We can't be Marco Roth, who speaks at every one of those conferences.
Yes, including ours.
Including your, yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Let's go, Marco. Marco's my GOAT.
You just like wake up and he's, oh, Marco's in America. And then next day you wake up, oh, Marco's in Asia. He just,
He messaged me one day. He's, hey, man, I'm going to be in Phoenix in a few days if you want to hang out. And I was like, what? Just drove on through.
And still has time to write open source.
Yeah. What a guy.
I want to throw out one last thing just about community. First off, I'm going to tell you right now that if you want to run a conference, you're nuts. It's a lot of work, but it's doable. There's a lot of community support, as we've talked about. You could get it done if just build a big checklist and work through it. It's a Trello board. It gets done.
Don't say that to me, Spike. Stop.
Well, what I'm going to say is there are much simpler ways. So as I mentioned, I run this Code and Coffee meetup. It takes me 2 minutes a week to get ChatGPT to write some social media posts that I send out. We have a community Slack that I mentioned, and the person who runs that spends maybe an hour a month kicking bots out. And then we have Boulder Ruby, which Marty and several other people run, and that's a few hours a month. But you can definitely get something going in your community without taking that huge leap and running a conference. And it's so worth it to get to know the other people in your community and connect. And there's absolutely no way I could do this conference without those things, right? That's where I found all my volunteers. That's where I get all the support. And so start small, just have a coffee meetup or a Slack and see where it goes from there.
I think that's great advice. Start small. You don't have to jump into the riskier thing of putting down money on a venue and all that. You can do a meetup first, do that for 6 months and make sure that you can get people there. But then that's probably how you find your volunteers, or the best way to find those volunteers to help you do the bigger thing when you're ready for it. Seems like a good path, because we had done similar kind of things after I graduated. There was STL Ruby was like dead, I think. And so we like brought it back, but we started like very small and we're able to grow that a little bit. And that never really became anything big because we don't have that many Ruby developers here, but we had a solid 8 to 12 people that would come out regularly. And it was the sort of coding meetup that we got to just at least hang out with local Ruby developers, which is a rare situation. So it makes it like a regular thing, which is just alone important to have when you work remotely, at least.
Yeah, definitely.
Anything else that you guys want to touch on before we finish?
No, buy your tickets. We'd love to see you here.
Where can we find all of y'all online? Start with Spike.
Spikex.dev is all my links. I'll drop that in the chat.
Cool. Bekki?
LinkedIn, only LinkedIn. Bekki Freeman. I can put the link in the show notes also.
Cool. Marty?
Yeah, it depends. If you want to see food, sourdough baking, go to my Instagram. It's MG Haught. I'll give you a link. And LinkedIn is probably, I don't do too much on other socials, but LinkedIn, if you want to connect business-wise or engineering-wise, I'm on there, Marty Haught, just there.
Anyone in Phoenix listening to this, let's get coffee. I know y'all are out there.
There you go.
Thank you
Thanks
so much for having us.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Have fun.